In the heart of Zogar Station, the marketplace buzzed with activity. A variety of alien species, from towering reptilian dracons to the tiny insectoid Frin, filled the sprawling space. Merchants shouted out their wares, and the scent of exotic spices mingled with the metallic tang of machinery. Captain Jonathan Armitage moved through the crowd with purposeful strides, his sharp eyes missing nothing. His human features stood out amid the alien throng, drawing curious glances. The auction platform dominated the center of the marketplace, a grim stage where beings of all kinds were sold to the highest bidder. The announcer, a slithering Silthar with a mouth full of needle-like teeth, called for attention. The crowd fell silent as the next item was brought forth, a Larkian female. Her sapphire skin glimmered under the artificial lights, her eyes reflecting a mix of fear and defiance. She was shackled, her delicate wings bound tightly to her back. The Silthar's voice echoed through the marketplace. "Next on the block, a rare Larkian, starting bid, 500 credits. Bidders raised their hands, the price climbing rapidly. Jonathan watched the scene with a hardened expression. He knew he couldn't stand by. When the price reached 2,000 credits, he made his move. 3,000 credits, he called out, his voice clear and commanding. A hush fell over the crowd. Whispers of disbelief spread among the onlookers. The Silthar blinked its multiple eyes in surprise, but quickly regained composure. "Sold, to the human," it declared, motioning for Jonathan to step forward and claim his purchase. Jonathan approached the platform, his heart pounding. He looked up at the Larkian, meeting her eyes with a reassuring nod. "You're free now," he said quietly, unlocking her shackles. The crowd dispersed, some muttering in disapproval, but Jonathan paid them no mind. He guided the Larkian through the throng, aware of the curious and hostile glances thrown their way. Navigating the labyrinthine corridors of Zogar Station, Jonathan led Lyra, the newly freed Larkian, towards the docking bay where the Resolute was berthed. The station's security forces, alerted by the unusual transaction, were already on high alert. They suspected foul play and had no intention of letting Jonathan leave without a thorough inspection. Lyra's steps were hesitant, her eyes darting around nervously. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, her voice soft but filled with a mixture of confusion and hope. Jonathan glanced back at her, his expression determined. "Because it's the right thing to do. No one deserves to be treated like a commodity." They reached a security checkpoint, where a group of armed guards blocked their path. The head guard, a burly Zethran with sharp tusks, eyed them suspiciously. "State your business," he growled. "We're leaving," Jonathan replied calmly, producing forged documents. "Everything's in order." The Zithran inspected the documents, his eyes narrowing. "These look questionable," he said, signaling for reinforcements. "You're not going anywhere until we've verified your story." Jonathan's hand moved to his sidearm, but before he could draw it, Lyra acted. Her wings, previously bound and weak, now unfurled with a burst of strength. She leapt into the air, her speed and agility catching the guards off guard. With a series of swift, graceful movements, she disarmed them, leaving them stunned and incapacitated. "Move!" she urged Jonathan, her voice now filled with urgency and confidence. Together, they sprinted through the corridors, alarms blaring in their wake. Jonathan guided her through the maze-like station, relying on his intimate knowledge of its layout. They encountered more security forces, but Lyra's newfound freedom and determination made her a formidable ally. They reached the Resolute, where Jonathan's crew was already prepping for departure. "Get us out of here now!" he barked as they boarded. The ship's engines roared to life, and within moments they were blasting away from Zogar Station, the stars stretching into lines as they jumped to hyperspace. Inside the ship, Jonathan finally allowed himself to breathe. He turned to Lyra, who was catching her breath, her eyes bright with a mixture of relief and exhilaration. "Welcome aboard the Resolute," he said with a small smile. "You're safe now." Lyra looked around, taking in her new surroundings. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, she felt a glimmer of hope. "Thank you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Thank you for giving me my freedom." Lyra's quarters were modest but comfortable. She marveled at the simple luxuries, a bed, a small viewport showing the endless expanse of space, and the absence of chains. As she settled in, Jonathan knocked on the doorframe. "How are you holding up?" he asked, leaning against the door. Lyra looked up, her eyes reflecting a mixture of gratitude and apprehension. "It's a lot to take in. I never thought I'd be free." Jonathan stepped inside, his demeanor gentle. "Take your time. You're part of this crew now. We'll help you find your place." Over the following weeks, Lyra slowly adjusted to life aboard the Resolute. She found solace in the routine of ship duties and the camaraderie of the crew. Mia taught her basic piloting skills. Rax showed her the intricacies of the ship's engines, and Elena became a confidant, helping her heal from the traumas of her past. One evening, as the ship drifted through the calm of space, Lyra joined Jonathan in the observation deck. The stars glittered like diamonds, and the silence was profound. "I want to thank you," Lyra began, her voice steady. "Not just for freeing me, but for giving me a chance to live again." Jonathan nodded, his gaze fixed on the stars. "Everyone deserves a chance at freedom, Lyra. You're stronger than you know. Together we'll ensure no one has to endure what you did." As they stood there, a sense of purpose began to take root in Lyra. She wasn't just a survivor. She was part of a family, one that fought for justice in an unjust galaxy. While exploring an uncharted sector, the Resolute picked up a faint distress signal. The crew gathered on the bridge, their expressions tense with anticipation. "Can you pinpoint the source, Mia?" Jonathan asked, leaning over the console. Mia's fingers flew across the controls. "Got it. It's coming from a ship about 3 parsecs from our position. Looks like it's under attack." Jonathan's jaw tightened. "Set a course. We're going in." As the Resolute approached the distressed vessel, they saw it was under siege by a Tyrak battlecruiser. The smaller ship, an Elorian transport, was desperately trying to evade the Tyrak's relentless assault. "Weapons hot," Jonathan ordered. "Target their engines and weapon systems." The Resolute swooped into the fray, lasers blazing. The Tyrak battlecruiser, caught off guard, returned fire. The space around them lit up with the exchange of energy blasts. Lyra, now manning a secondary gun turret, focused on taking out the enemy's weapon emplacements. The battle was intense, with the Resolute's crew working in perfect synchrony. Mia's expert piloting kept them one step ahead of the Tyrak's attacks, while Rax's quick repairs ensured the ship stayed in one piece. Lyra's sharp shooting skills, honed from her days of survival, proved invaluable. After a fierce exchange, the Resolute's precision strikes crippled the Tyrak battlecruiser's engines. Jonathan seized the moment. "Boarding party, get ready. We're going to help those Elorians." Lyra joined the boarding team, her heart pounding with adrenaline. They docked with the Elorian transport, and as the airlock hissed open, they were met with scenes of chaos. The Elorians, a peaceful and scholarly race, were not equipped for battle. Jonathan and his crew moved swiftly, repelling the remaining Tyrak soldiers. Lyra's eyes scanned the crowd of terrified Elorians, and she spotted a young girl, separated from her family. She dashed through the melee, scooping the child into her arms, just as a Tyrak soldier lunged at them. With a swift kick, she disarmed him, securing the safety of the girl. "Thank you," the girl's mother gasped, tears streaming down her face as she reclaimed her daughter. Once the Tyrak forces were subdued, the Elorian leader, a dignified elder named Thalos, approached Jonathan. "We owe you our lives," he said, his voice trembling with gratitude. "We were transporting vital research to the Confederation when the Tyrak ambushed us." Jonathan nodded, glancing at Lyra, who was comforting the rescued girl. "We're all in this fight together. We'll escort you to safety." The Resolute escorted the Elorian transport to a secure Confederation outpost. Thalos, the Elorian leader, invited Jonathan and his crew to a meeting with the Confederation Council. The Council, a diverse group of leaders from various species, convened in a grand hall filled with holographic maps and strategic displays. Jonathan and Lyra stood before the Council, presenting the intelligence they had gathered from their skirmishes with the Tyrak Empire. "The Tyrak are planning a large-scale invasion," Jonathan explained. "Their new weapon could shift the balance of power in their favor." The council members murmured among themselves. Finally, a tall, elegant Illuvian named Seraphina, the head of the council, spoke. "Your actions have proven your commitment to our cause. The Confederation is hesitant to form alliances with outsiders, but we recognize the value of your information and your courage. We will consider a partnership." As the council deliberated, Lyra noticed a familiar face among the attendees. A Tyrak spy who had infiltrated the meeting. She discreetly alerted Jonathan, who quickly signaled his crew. Within moments, they apprehended the spy, exposing the Tyrak's intentions to sabotage the Confederation from within. This act of vigilance further solidified the trust between the Resolute and the Confederation. The Council agreed to form a tentative alliance, pooling their resources and intelligence to counter the Tyrak threat. However, the alliance came with a warning. The Tyrak would stop at nothing to crush any opposition. With the Tyrak Empire closing in, the Resolute ventured into the Fringe, a lawless region of space beyond the control of any major power. The Fringe was a wild and unpredictable place, filled with pirates, smugglers, and rogue factions. Jonathan hoped to find new allies and resources to bolster their fight against the Tyrak. As they navigated the treacherous region, they encountered the Marauders, a group of fierce warriors led by the enigmatic Rhea. The Marauders were known for their ruthlessness, but also for their strong sense of honor. Initially, the encounter was tense, with both sides wary of each other's intentions. Jonathan and Rhea met face to face in a neutral zone, surrounded by their respective crews. Rhea, a tall and imposing figure with a scar running across her face, studied Jonathan intently. "What brings you to the Fringe, human?" "We seek allies in our fight against the Tyrak Empire," Jonathan replied, his tone steady. "They threaten not just us, but the entire galaxy." Rhea's eyes narrowed. "The Tyrak have been a thorn in our side as well, but why should we trust you?" Before Jonathan could respond, a sudden attack interrupted their meeting. A rogue faction known as the Black Vipers, opportunistic and dangerous, had set their sights on the Marauders and the Resolute. The two groups, forced to cooperate, fought side by side against the common enemy. The battle was fierce and chaotic, with ships weaving through the debris-laden space, exchanging heavy fire. Lyra, now a seasoned fighter, took command of one of the gun turrets, her precise shots crippling the Vipers' offensive. Jonathan and Rhea led the charge, their combined tactics proving to be a formidable force. After repelling the attack, Rhea turned to Jonathan, respect evident in her eyes. "You fight with honor and skill? Perhaps there is more to this alliance than I thought." The Marauders agreed to join forces with the Resolute, bringing their combat expertise and local knowledge of the Fringe. The alliance was uneasy at first, but through shared missions and mutual respect, a strong bond began to form. Together, they raided Tyrak supply lines, gathered crucial intelligence, and disrupted the Empire's operations. The Resolute and the Marauders' combined efforts in the Fringe brought new hope to their cause. They found allies among other rogue factions, each adding to their strength and resources. The once fractured region started to unite against the common threat, inspired by the courage and determination of Jonathan, Lyra, and their crew. With the combined forces of the Resolute and their new allies, Jonathan and his crew received alarming intelligence from their raids and reconnaissance missions. The Tyrak Empire was developing a planet-destroying superweapon, hidden deep within their territory. This weapon had the potential to annihilate entire civilizations, and its existence was a dire threat to all free beings in the galaxy. Jonathan gathered his crew and their allies aboard the Resolute's command deck. Holographic projections displayed the data they had collected. "This superweapon cannot be allowed to become operational," Jonathan stated firmly. "We need to act swiftly and decisively." Lyra, standing beside him, nodded. "We've identified a key development site within the Tyrak's core systems. It's heavily fortified, but if we can infiltrate it, we might be able to sabotage their efforts from within." The plan required splitting their forces. Jonathan and Lyra would lead a team to infiltrate the development site, using the intelligence they had gathered to navigate the complex. The rest of the crew and their allies would create a diversion, drawing the bulk of the Tyrak's defenses away from the site. As preparations were made, the tension aboard the Resolute was palpable. The crew knew the risks involved, but their determination to stop the Tyrak superweapon was unwavering. They bid their comrades farewell, each team taking their positions for the upcoming mission. The infiltration team, consisting of Jonathan, Lyra, and a select group of skilled operatives, boarded a small stealth ship. They navigated through enemy lines, avoiding patrols and sensors with precision. Lyra's intimate knowledge of Tyrak protocols proved invaluable, guiding them through the perilous journey. As they approached the development site, a sprawling facility hidden within a dense asteroid field, Lyra's voice came over the comms. "We're entering the outer perimeter. Everyone, stay sharp." They docked covertly and moved swiftly through the facility's labyrinthine corridors. Jonathan and Lyra, working in perfect synchrony, neutralized guards and bypassed security systems. Their objective was to reach the control center, where they could initiate a sabotage sequence to destroy the superweapon from within. While Jonathan and Lyra infiltrated the facility, the rest of the Resolute's crew, along with their allies, prepared for the diversionary assault on a key Tyrak supply convoy. The convoy was crucial for the Tyrak's logistics, and hitting it would draw their attention away from the infiltration team. The battle began with a sudden, coordinated strike. The Resolute, accompanied by the Marauders and other allied ships, swooped in on the convoy, their weapons blazing. The space around them erupted in a symphony of laser fire and explosions. Mia, piloting the Resolute with her usual expertise, maneuvered the ship through the chaos. "Keep their defenses focused on us," she called out. "We need to buy Jonathan and Lyra as much time as possible." Rax, working tirelessly in the engine room, kept the ship's systems running smoothly despite the damage they were taking. "We're holding together, but we can't keep this up forever," he reported. On the bridge, Elena coordinated medical teams, ready to assist any wounded. The crew fought with unwavering determination, each member playing their part to perfection. The convoy's defenses were formidable, but the Resolute's crew and their allies fought with a fierce resolve. Back inside the Tyrak facility, Jonathan and Lyra reached the control center. They quickly set to work, planting charges and initiating the sabotage sequence. Alarms blared, and the facility's defenses began to mobilize in response to their presence. "Time's running out," Jonathan said, glancing at Lyra. "We need to move." As they made their way back towards their extraction point, they encountered heavy resistance. Tyrak soldiers, realizing the gravity of the situation, fought desperately to stop them. Lyra's agility and Jonathan's combat skills proved essential as they battled their way through. Outside, the diversionary assault continued with ferocity. The Allied forces had managed to draw a significant portion of the Tyrak fleet away from the facility, but the fight was far from over. The crew of the Resolute pushed their limits, determined to hold the line. Jonathan and Lyra finally reached their extraction point, where the stealth ship awaited them. As they boarded, Lyra initiated the final phase of the sabotage sequence. "Charges set. This place is going to blow." The stealth ship launched from the facility, racing away from the impending explosion. As they cleared the asteroid field, the facility erupted in a massive explosion, sending shockwaves through space. The Tyrak superweapon was no more. Rejoining the Resolute and their allies, the crew celebrated their victory, though the battle was still raging. The diversionary forces managed to break away, retreating to safer territory. The mission had been a success, but the war against the Tyrak Empire was far from over. The Resolute returned to its hidden base within the fringe, carrying the weight of both victory and loss. The crew gathered in the mess hall, a somber silence filling the room as they mourned their fallen comrades. The cost of their mission was high, and the reality of their sacrifices settled heavily upon them. Lyra stood before the crew, her eyes reflecting the shared grief. "We've lost friends, family. Their bravery and sacrifice will never be forgotten," she began, her voice steady yet filled with emotion. "We fight not just for ourselves, but for every life the Tyrak have oppressed. We honor the fallen by continuing this fight." After the memorial, Jonathan found Lyra alone in the observation deck, staring out at the stars. He approached her quietly. "You were strong today, Lyra." She turned to him, her expression conflicted. "I had to be. We all did. But it's hard not to think about everything we've lost." Jonathan nodded, understanding the pain that lingered in her words. "I know. But we've also gained so much. You've inspired us, brought us together. Your strength gives us hope." Lyra looked at him, her eyes searching. "How do you do it, Jonathan? How do you keep going?" He took a deep breath, his gaze distant. "I keep going because I believe in what we're fighting for. I've seen too much injustice, too much pain. I can't stand by and do nothing. And now, with you by my side, I feel stronger than ever." The crew of the Resolute and their allies gathered in the war room, a holographic map of the Tyrak Empire displayed before them. Jonathan outlined the plan, his voice firm and commanding. "We'll divide into two groups. One will create a diversion, drawing Tyrak forces away from the hub. The second group, led by Lyra and me, will infiltrate the hub and plant the disruption device." Mia, always eager for a challenge, grinned. "We've got the diversion covered. We'll give them hell." Rhea, the leader of the Marauders, nodded. "Our forces are ready. The Tyrak won't know what hit them." As they finalized their plans, Lyra pulled Jonathan aside. "This mission? It feels different, more dangerous." Jonathan met her gaze, his expression serious. "It is, but it's also crucial. If we succeed, we'll severely weaken the Tyrak's hold on the galaxy." The teams prepared for the mission, their every move calculated and precise. As the Resolute and the Marauder fleet approached Tyrak space, the tension was palpable. They knew the risks, but they also understood the stakes. The diversionary force, led by Mia and Rhea, launched their assault on a heavily fortified Tyrak outpost. The space around them erupted into chaos, laser fire streaking across the void. The diversion was effective, drawing a significant portion of the Tyrak fleet away from the communication hub. Meanwhile, Jonathan, Lyra, and their infiltration team slipped through the enemy lines, their stealth ship cloaked and silent. They reached the hub, a massive structure bristling with defenses. Using the intelligence they had gathered, they navigated through the facility's security systems, avoiding patrols and surveillance. Inside the hub, the team moved swiftly. Lyra's knowledge of Tyrak technology once again proved invaluable, guiding them through the complex. They reached the central control room, where the communication arrays were located. Jonathan and Lyra set the disruption device, a small but powerful piece of technology designed to overload the Tyrak's communication network. As they worked, an alarm suddenly blared, and the facility's security forces closed in on them. The team fought fiercely, holding their ground while Jonathan and Lyra completed the final steps of their mission. With the device activated, they made their way back to the extraction point, pursued by Tyrak soldiers. The fighting was intense, with the team using every tactic and maneuver they had learned to stay ahead of their pursuers. As they reached the stealth ship, Lyra looked back at the facility, knowing that their actions would have far-reaching consequences. The device detonated, sending a pulse through the Tyrak communication network. The hub's systems overloaded, plunging the Empire's command structure into chaos. The team's escape was harrowing, but they managed to break free, rendezvousing with the rest of their forces. As they regrouped, the crew of the Resolute and their allies celebrated their success. The mission had been dangerous, but the impact was undeniable. The Tyrak Empire's ability to coordinate its forces was severely crippled, giving the resistance a much-needed advantage. Under the cover of darkness, the Resolute and their allies prepared for their most dangerous mission yet, infiltrating the heart of the Tyrak Empire's superweapon development site. The facility was hidden deep within the Empire's core systems, surrounded by formidable defenses and patrolled by elite guards. The crew gathered in the war room, the atmosphere tense with anticipation. Jonathan addressed them, his voice steady and resolute. "This is it. We've crippled their communications, but this superweapon could still turn the tide in their favor. We must destroy it before it becomes operational." Lyra, standing beside him, added, "We'll split into two teams. One will create a diversion, drawing the bulk of their forces away. The other, led by Jonathan and me, will infiltrate the facility and plant the charges to destroy the weapon." The team suited up, each member aware of the risks but determined to succeed. As the diversionary team, led by Mia and Rhea, launched their assault on the outer defenses, the infiltration team slipped through the chaos, their stealth ship cloaked in darkness. Landing on a remote platform, Jonathan and Lyra led their team into the facility's labyrinthine corridors. Lyra's knowledge of Tyrak's security protocols proved invaluable as they navigated through heavily guarded areas. They moved swiftly and silently, avoiding patrols and disabling security systems with precision. The deeper they went, the more the tension mounted. They reached the core of the facility, where the superweapon was being assembled. The massive structure loomed before them, a stark reminder of the Empire's ruthless ambition. "Plant the charges here and here," Jonathan instructed, pointing to critical structural points. The team worked quickly, placing explosive devices at strategic locations around the superweapon. As they completed their task, alarms suddenly blared, and the facility's defenses activated. Tyrak soldiers swarmed the area, and the infiltration team found themselves in a fierce firefight. Jonathan and Lyra fought side by side, their movements synchronized and efficient. The team's training and determination shone through as they held their ground against overwhelming odds. With the charges set, they made a desperate push towards their extraction point. The fighting intensified, with laser fire and explosions lighting up the corridors. Despite the chaos, the team remained focused, their mission clear in their minds. As they reached the extraction point, the facility's structural integrity began to fail. The charges detonated in a series of controlled explosions, each blast bringing the superweapon closer to destruction. The infiltration team boarded their stealth ship just as the facility started to collapse. The ship rocketed away from the crumbling structure, narrowly escaping the explosion that consumed the superweapon. The team's hearts pounded as they watched the facility implode, knowing they had succeeded against all odds. The destruction of the Tyrak superweapon sent shockwaves throughout the galaxy. The Empire, reeling from the loss of their devastating weapon and crippled communication network, launched a desperate counteroffensive. The Resolute and their allies braced for the inevitable retaliation. As the remnants of the Tyrak fleet converged on their position, the Allied forces prepared for the battle that would decide the fate of the galaxy. Jonathan and Lyra stood on the bridge of the Resolute, their determination unwavering. "This is it," Jonathan said, his voice filled with resolve. "We've struck a major blow, but the fight isn't over. We must stand together and push back the Tyrak once and for all." The Allied fleet, a mix of human and alien ships, formed up, ready to face the oncoming storm. The Tyrak fleet appeared on the horizon, a dark and menacing force. The two sides clashed in a titanic battle, the void of space lighting up with the fury of combat. Jonathan and Lyra led the Resolute into the heart of the conflict, their crew fighting with everything they had. The battle was chaotic and brutal, with ships from both sides being torn apart by relentless fire. Despite the intensity, the unity and coordination of the Allied forces began to turn the tide. In the midst of the battle, Jonathan and Lyra received a distress call from an Allied ship under heavy attack. Without hesitation, they diverted to provide assistance. The Resolute's weapons blazed, cutting through the Tyrak forces and providing cover for the stricken vessel. As they fought, Lyra's mind raced. "We need to take out their command ship. It's coordinating their fleet." Jonathan nodded. "Agreed. Mia, plot a course for the Tyrak command ship." The Resolute surged forward, weaving through the chaos of battle. They approached the command ship, a massive vessel bristling with weapons and shields. The fight was fierce, with the Resolute taking heavy fire, but their determination never wavered. Jonathan and Lyra led a boarding party onto the Tyrak command ship, fighting their way through its corridors. They encountered fierce resistance, but their resolve was unbreakable. Reaching the command center, they confronted the Tyrak admiral, a towering figure clad in imposing armor. The final battle was intense, with Jonathan and Lyra working in perfect harmony. They fought with all their strength, knowing that the fate of countless lives rested on their shoulders. In a climactic showdown, they defeated the admiral, dealing a crippling blow to the Tyrak command structure. With the admiral defeated and the command ship in disarray, the Allied forces rallied. The Tyrak fleet, leaderless and demoralized, began to fall apart. The tide of battle turned decisively in favor of the Allies. Jonathan and Lyra, along with their crew, worked tirelessly to help those in need. They delivered medical supplies, assisted in rebuilding infrastructure, and provided support to war-torn communities. The gratitude and resilience of the people they helped reinforced their commitment to the cause. One day, while overseeing the reconstruction of a shattered colony on the planet of Eloria, Jonathan and Lyra were approached by Thalos, the Elorian leader they had once rescued. "You've done more than we could ever repay," Thalos said, his eyes filled with gratitude. "You've not only given us hope, but also the means to rebuild our lives." Jonathan shook his head, a humble smile on his face. "We did what needed to be done. We all fought together for a better future." Lyra, standing beside him, added, "This is just the beginning. The galaxy is vast, and there are many more who need our help." As the Resolute continued its journey, the crew encountered various planets and civilizations, each with its unique challenges and stories. They mediated disputes, fostered alliances, and shared knowledge, helping to forge a new era of cooperation and unity. During their travels, they received word of a large-scale refugee crisis on the outer rim of the galaxy. Thousands of beings, displaced by the war, were struggling to survive in makeshift camps. The Resolute's crew immediately set course for the affected area, determined to provide aid. Upon arrival, they were met with scenes of desperation and suffering. The crew sprang into action, distributing food, water, and medical supplies. Elena, the ship's medic, worked around the clock to treat the sick and injured, her compassion and dedication inspiring those around her. Jonathan and Lyra coordinated efforts with local leaders, organizing shelters and establishing safe zones. The scale of the crisis was overwhelming, but their determination never wavered. Through their tireless efforts, they managed to stabilize the situation, bringing hope to those who had lost everything. One evening, as the sun set over the refugee camp, Jonathan and Lyra sat together, reflecting on their journey. "We've come so far," Lyra said, her voice filled with a mix of exhaustion and pride. "But there's still so much to do." Jonathan took her hand, his gaze steady. "We'll keep going. Together, we can make a difference." With the immediate crisis under control, the Resolute received an invitation to a historic summit on the planet of Elysium. Leaders from across the galaxy, including representatives from former enemy factions, gathered to discuss the future and ensure lasting peace. The summit was held in a grand hall, its walls adorned with symbols of unity and hope. As Jonathan, Lyra, and their crew arrived, they were greeted with respect and admiration. Their actions had become a beacon of hope for many, and their presence at the summit was highly anticipated. Jonathan and Lyra took their seats among the delegates, listening as each leader shared their vision for the future. The discussions were passionate, at times heated, but driven by a common desire for peace and cooperation. When it was Jonathan's turn to speak, he stood with quiet confidence. "We've all suffered because of the Tyrak Empire's ambition, but through our collective efforts, we've overcome. Now, we must focus on building a future where such tyranny can never take root again. We need to foster understanding, cooperation, and trust among our peoples." Lyra added, "Our journey has shown us the strength that comes from unity. We must continue to support one another, to rebuild not just our homes but our relationships. Together we can create a galaxy where freedom and justice prevail." The summit concluded with a pledge from all attendees to work towards a lasting peace. New alliances were formed, trade agreements were established, and cooperative projects were initiated to rebuild and strengthen the galaxy. As the Resolute departed Elysium, Jonathan and Lyra looked ahead with renewed hope. The galaxy was still scarred, but the seeds of a brighter future had been planted. They continued their mission, now as ambassadors of peace and unity, visiting planets and communities, spreading the message of cooperation and mutual support. One day, while on a diplomatic mission to a distant star system, the Resolute received an urgent distress signal. A remote outpost was under attack by remnants of the Tyrak forces. Without hesitation, Jonathan and Lyra led their crew into action, coordinating with local defenders to repel the assault. The battle was intense, but the combined forces of the Resolute and the local defenders prevailed. The outpost was saved, and the remnants of the Tyrak were captured or scattered. The victory reinforced the importance of their mission and the strength of their alliances. In the aftermath, Jonathan and Lyra stood before the gathered defenders, their faces reflecting a mixture of determination and hope. "We will continue to stand against any threat to peace and freedom," Jonathan declared. "Together, we are stronger than any enemy." Lyra nodded, her eyes shining with conviction. "The galaxy is vast, and our journey is far from over. But as long as we stand together, there is nothing we cannot achieve." And so the Resolute and its crew continued their journey, spreading hope and unity across the stars. They knew that challenges lay ahead, but they faced the future with unwavering resolve, guided by the belief that together they could build a better galaxy for all.